The majority of characters in Hollywood are based on individuals we've never met, but occasionally a character who is a bit too familiar, too detailed, or both is penned. That's what occurred when a fresh legal drama began circulating in early 2024 script that is anonymous. One-word title for prestige studio Obsidian, The Pitch. A fiery, intelligent, morally unwavering international attorney torn between the courtroom and international diplomacy. They referred to her as the counselor. Nobody gave it much mind at first, but after seeing the early character notes, mood board, styling breakdown, and one question that was shared across 3 agencies and a very secret group chat, someone did. The background scene, the voice, the hair, the case history, and the actor playing her weren't just similar. They were identical. Is this Amal? Is Blake Lively's latest script just me, or Obsidian is modeled on Amal Clooney, all the way down to the UN speech? Rhythm. It's almost fan fiction. There was no biopic here. It was Amal and not permitted. Blake never claimed it was about her. Instead, she played it straight. When George learned, the silent retaliation that ensued wasn't only personal, it was surgical. She hadn't even been approached. Even George Clooney, who has created, directed, and lived stories, wasn't prepared to witness his wife in a script that she never approved. It took place in a private screening room in London and featured early Obsidian preview footage. 10 minutes into the video, George paused the remote replay to watch Blake Lively give a monologue on foregoing motherhood for diplomacy after being requested to provide the director with some light-hearted thoughts as a favor. It wasn't merely recognizable. It was a word-for-word fictionalization of Amal's 2016 UN panel quote. He did not complete the screening. Rather, he made a silent call. Not to Blake, the studio, or his legal team, as it is not a compliment when someone portrays your wife without your consent. Trespassing is what it is. The following day, a few things subtly changed. In studio trackers, the title of the script was modified. One email from the casting office leaked, and the director's name was discreetly taken off of press kits. Eliminate Amal's details. For the time being, keep Blake on board. It seems that Blake's new role was inspired by Al Clooney, and after seeing the script, George decided to tone it down while still keeping her involved. That's crazy. George was not finished, though, as one thing became very evident. Not only had Blake broken a boundary, but she had also entered someone else's life. If George Clooney is skilled at anything, it's rewriting a conclusion. Just to remind you, it takes hours to piece together each deleted tweet, false remark, and PR cover-up. Click the Join button to become a member if you wish to support this channel's continued existence. We will continue to reveal what they refuse to. George Clooney didn't call Blake, didn't threaten her, and didn't even mention her name, yet 3 days after that screening, an odd event happened. A casting call was unsuccessful. A long-standing invitation to the Met Gala was revoked after a producer left a Blake Lively fashion biography due to a whispered private statement that George didn't like what he saw, not because of controversy or publicity. According to rumors, Blake Lively was secretly dismissed from 2 high-profile projects this week following a negative interaction with a certain power producer. It was business, not personal. Because you're disengaged rather than blacklisted. When someone like George Clooney betrays your trust, it works and is more subtly lasting. Insiders began referring to it as the gray list. She sensed that no one ever came back from Blake, but it wasn't proven or definite. The calls became less frequent. The offerings changed. More brand advertisements, fewer dramas. Her name appeared in industry roundtables. Additionally, the response that her publicist sent to a director connected to George's smokehouse photos was removed. Not this quarter. This tone wasn't one of rejection. It was a message. George Clooney is renowned for his poise, charisma, and timing, for understanding when to talk and when to let quiet do the heavy lifting. He is not known for his mess. Therefore, nobody anticipated that he would address the claims when he sat down for a rare interview with the Hollywood Round. "Do you believe image can be weaponized in Hollywood?" the journalist questioned after they had discussed the future of storytelling, legacy projects, and new initiatives. "Yeah, I've seen people model entire performances after someone they met once at a dinner party," George replied after pausing to laugh softly. "It's mimicking rather than acting, and if you're not careful, it becomes into thievery." The table fell silent, but he didn't mention names. "Modeling performances after dinner party guests isn't acting. It's theft," George Clooney once said. "It feels like a really particular tint." When the extended version went public online, that clip became viral even though the comment wasn't in the initial edit or advertised in the teaser. In just 6 hours, the phrase, "mimicry isn't acting," topped Twitter's search results and comments. Is he referring to Blake? George just pulled a Reese, and this is the most courteous takedown I've ever seen. That line wasn't a coincidence. It was computed, because the business had already determined that she wasn't only imitating when George eventually spoke, but rather climbing and stomping on people to achieve it, and the man she attempted to win over was done acting reframing. The story is something Blake Lively has always been skilled at. She doesn't post angry threads or lash out. She sets up an interview for her profile. People thought she was finally going to address the rumors when a new cover piece for Elle magazine was revealed. The cover said it all. "I have no regrets." The they statement. "I think women are so often accused of manipulation when really we're just navigating a room full of expectations," appeared after the feature images of Blake dressed in muted hues, seated in a Parisian loft and posed like a confused genius. It was ambiguous, it was polished, it was intended to give her a robust appearance. However, it instead sparked a whole counter-narrative. Blake Lively was accused of literally mimicking Amal Clooney's demeanor, so she wasn't playing the misunderstood woman card. This cannot be made up. The Elle feature has only been available for a day. When a casting pre-approval document linked to an impending streaming political drama began making the rounds in group discussions, a leaked agency memo. There were 3 names mentioned, and 2 of them had green lights. "Do not proceed with," the one redlined next to Blake's name. "Note the unresolved Clooney fallout as a volatility risk." That was the last straw, since this was career harm rather than public theater. Producers began subtly substituting her. Panel invitations remained unanswered, and the headline, "The Blake Lively Glow-Up Has Expired," appeared on an industry site. Even her team fell silent. The industry believed it was finished. Blake was no longer involved with the project. Her press tour was a bust. The Elle interview was unsuccessful. And George Clooney said nothing until a night in late March, when the British Film Institute held a private Q&A session on the subject of Hollywood power and ethics. An audience member then questioned George, who was as composed and incisive as ever. "What do you think about actors who use real people as inspiration without consent?" A few apprehensive giggles were heard during the interval. Leaning forward, George adjusted his microphone and uttered, "I think if you have to." That was it. One sentence, no name, no nod, and no accusations. But the response was instantaneous. The audience fell silent. Then there was a gasp. Everyone in the room and online knew who he was referring to, so there was a brief period of stillness. George Clooney once remarked, "You probably never had your own integrity if you have to borrow someone else's." It isn't shade in a BFI Q&A. What a fantastic eulogy. The quote's video clips went viral in a matter of hours. Director of Entertainment Accounts Forum's law school TikToks. Everybody was analyzing that single line. Not only was it insightful, but it also validated what many people had murmured. Blake Lively did more than simply imitate Amal Clooney's style. Her husband was the first to discover that she was trying to perform her full identity. Blake Lively stopped talking when George's quote went viral. No paparazzi walks, no Instagram stories, no coffee runs that are styled. Her group did not comment. Her stylist discreetly canceled 2 brand partners and postponed 3 planned shoots. But Amal didn't respond. Instead, she constructed because Amal was finishing together a campaign, not for Vogue or Hulu, but for the Clooney Foundation for Justice, that would conceal the entire story while Blake was sharing carefully chosen lines about boundaries. Amal Clooney spoke in Geneva in May 2024. The topic of women's exposure and media abuse in the contemporary era, When They Borrow Your Face, is the title There Were No Names Mentioned. The pictures behind her black and white stills of phony advertisements, alongside actors rebranding as activists, and one particularly memorable image of Blake Lively on a panel wearing a tan trouser suit that Amal had worn at the UN 6 months. Before, without any rumors or remarks, there was silence in the room as Amal said her last words. Nothing is more harmful than a woman who views empathy as a fashion accessory. In the end, Amal didn't need to take Blake down. She simply wanted the world to see her, and once they did, they couldn't unsee it. That one statement wasn't just a reaction. It was a warning to every producer, editor, and actor who had witnessed this happen and remained silent. I'm trembling after Amal Clooney's When They Borrow Your Face speech. That statement regarding empathy as an accessory, that was for everyone, including Blake. The speech ought to have lasted only a few period, a strong keynote and a sophisticated response. However, what followed wasn't elegant. It was surgical, since Blake had been subtly working on a Hulu Originals project that was canceled less than 48 hours after Amal's speech. No announcement. There was only one screenshot from an internal review board that was disclosed. There was no email blast. It was a whisper rather than a blacklist. Once believed to be safe PR, Blake was now a liability as one passed between partners, sponsors, and producers. There was little fallout. Her name ceased to appear in pitches. 2 prominent fashion publications discreetly substituted Blake's impending feature with Amal Clooney for her humanitarian work rather than for red carpet outfits, and her stylist put a halt to branding discussions. Due to Blake's attempt to appropriate Amal's style, Amal never took anything from Blake and didn't reply till she, with only one Instagram post, no tag, no caption, a broad view of the back of her head carrying a document into the UN. The legitimacy of the exposed tab is not branding. Over 300,000 people reposted that picture, and nobody backed Blake in any of the comment sections. Amal Clooney just used one picture to ruin a whole public relations campaign. Just presence, no shade, no caption, and Blake completely vanished as Amal didn't raise her voice at the end. She simply waited for the tale to come to light without leaking it. And Blake, she wasn't fired. Instead, the genuine thing took her place.